Hi guys, and welcome to Quiet Voice podcast channel. Tonight we climb aboard an 1890s steam train during a snowstorm, where the world outside is white, wild, and bitterly cold, while inside the carriage, brass lamps glow like small moons. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to sleep while iron wheels beat time beneath your feet, or how warm a train could feel when frost crawled across the glass tonight? You stand on a snowy platform, breath silver in the air, with coal smoke drifting over your hat and the engine breathing like a patient beast. Porters call through the storm, trunks bump along the boards, and somewhere nearby, a child presses mittened hands to a window already clouded with steam. So, before you settle into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. And tell us in the comments where you are listening from and what your local time is right now. Perhaps it is midnight there. Perhaps the room is already quiet. Now, dim the lights. You feel the cold first in your fingertips, even through your gloves, because winter is a very determined visitor. The station roof catches the falling snow, but the wind still finds clever ways inside. It slips under collars, lifts loose paper, and turns every gas lamp into a trembling golden blur. You stand close to your luggage, watching flakes gather on the brass corners of your travelling case. Around you, boots scrape over salted boards, and heavy coats brush together with a soft woolen hush. The air smells of coal smoke, wet leather, horse harness, and the sharp mineral scent of snow. Ahead, the locomotive waits with its black iron body shining under ice. It does not seem like a machine at first. It seems alive, as many travellers like to say in the 19th century, when steam engines still felt half invention and half monster. Its pistons rest for now, but the boiler murmurs with heat, and white vapour curls from pipes near the wheels. Every few moments, steam escapes with a sigh, as if the engine is bored by human delay. A bell rings through the station. You turn your head with the others, not quickly, because cold makes everyone move like furniture. A conductor steps along the platform with a lantern in one hand and a watch in the other. The watch matters. In the 1890s, railway time is no small thing. Across wide countries, trains have helped make clocks agree with one another, which is rather bossy for an object with wheels. Standardized railway time is already changing daily life, shaping meetings, meals, and the nervous habit of checking the minute at a hand. You move forward when your car is called, shoes pressing into slush. The train looks longer from beside it, a line of dark coaches stretching into white air. Snow collects on the couplings between cars, and chains hang stiff with frost. The carriage windows glow amber, each one showing a tiny moving picture of comfort. Faces pass behind misted glass. A hand wipes a circle clear. A nose appears briefly, then vanishes. The porter stands by the steps, wrapped in a dark coat with bright buttons. His cap is powdered with snow, and his cheeks shine from the cold. He takes your ticket and glances at it under the lantern. The paper softens slightly in your damp glove. You notice the careful punch mark, the printed destination, and the faint smell of ink. Even a ticket feels important tonight. It is permission to leave the storm while still travelling through it. Mind the step, he says, and his voice is almost swallowed by steam. You place one foot on the iron step. It is slick beneath your boot, cold enough to send a warning through the soul. For 1 second, the wind pushes at your back like an impatient relative. Then your hand closes around the rail, the metal bites your palm through the glove, and you climb into the vestibule, where warmth gathers in a narrow pocket. The change is immediate. Outside, the storm snaps and hisses against the train. Inside, the air feels thick with coal heat, lamp oil, damp wool, and the comfortable fatigue of travellers. You pause just inside the door while your eyes adjust. The carriage is panelled in varnished wood that reflects the lamps in long soft streaks. Brass fittings gleam at the edges. The ceiling curves gently overhead. catching shadows that sway with every movement. Someone has brought oranges. You catch the scent near a family seated halfway down the car, where a mother peels one slowly for a sleepy child. The bright citrus smell floats oddly among coal smoke and winter clothing. It feels almost tropical, which is slightly ridiculous in this weather. The child watches the peel spiral down with serious attention, as if citrus is tonight's most important engineering marvel. You move down the aisle, careful with each. Your shoulder brushes a hanging coat. Its fabric is damp and cold at the edge, but warm where it has faced the carriage stove. Passengers tuck knees inward to let you pass, performing that ancient ritual of travel in which everyone pretends there is enough room. There is not. There never has been. Humanity simply agrees to be narrower. Your seat waits near a window, upholstered in dark plush rubbed smooth by many journeys. The cushion gives under your weight with a tired sigh. It is not soft exactly, but it offers a firm kindness. You settle your case beneath the seat and remove your gloves, finger by finger. Your hands tingle as warmth returns, prickling unpleasantly before becoming pleasant. Snow melts on your sleeves, leaving tiny dark marks in the fabric. The window beside you is cold enough to fog your reflection. You lean closer and see your own face blurred by the lamplight. Then the white storm beyond. Outside, the platform drifts past in fragments of movement. A porter lifts a trunk. A dog shakes snow from its ears. A man argues with a baggage clerk using the helpless hand gestures of someone losing to bureaucracy. Some things are eternal. A whistle sounds, low and mournful. It rolls across the station and into the dark beyond, where fields and towns are already disappearing beneath snow. The sound vibrates faintly in your chest. Conversations dip for a moment, because even frequent travellers listen when a steam whistle speaks. It is announcement, warning, and farewell at once. You feel the journey gather itself around you, not yet moving, but no longer still. A woman across the aisle adjusts a hat pinned with black feathers. Beside her, a man in a fur collar unfolds a newspaper with careful irritation. The pages crackle loudly, and he glares at them, as if paper has personally offended him. Farther along, a travelling salesman opens a leather sample case just enough to check its contents. You glimpse ribbons, buttons, or perhaps small metal fittings. His hands move quickly, practiced from years of railway seats and hotel rooms. The conductor passes through, taking tickets with a small punch and a nod. His lamp swings at his side, sending light over shoes, hems, bags, and sleepy faces. When he reaches you, he checks your ticket again, though the porter already did. Railways love checking things. It gives everyone the soothing feeling that order exists, even when snow is burying the tracks outside. He punches the paper with a crisp click. That little sound joins the others, becoming part of the carriage's first music. A baby murmurs under a blanket. Someone coughs into a handkerchief. A stove door opens, and coal shifts with a dry clatter. The lamps hum faintly. Snow taps the windows in tiny, nervous patterns. You begin to hear the train as a collection of small domestic sounds gathered inside a moving shell. Then the couplings tighten. A jolt passes through the car, gentle but definite. People sway together. Strangers briefly united by physics. The wheels beneath you give a first reluctant turn outside. The station platform begins to slide backward. Slowly at first, then with growing confidence. The lampposts drift past like tired stars. Figures blur behind snow. The dog vanishes into steam. You are moving now. The engine pulls with steady force, and the carriage answers in creaks and soft groans. Wood, iron, glass, and cloth all make their complaints, then settle into cooperation. You feel the rhythm enter your body through the seat and floor. It is not yet a lullaby, not quite, but it has the promise of one. The wheels begin their measured pattern over the rails. a repeating sound that seems to say, away, away, oh, away. The city edges pass in dim shapes. Warehouses loom and fade. Telegraph poles lean beside the track, their wires trembling under snow. In the 1890s, those wires often run alongside railways, carrying messages faster than any train could manage. It is a strange companionship, iron road and electric whisper, both shrinking distance in their own proud ways. You watch the poles flick by until they become a dark comb against the pale sky. A fringe little belief follows such wires tonight, too. Some rural travellers still wonder whether storms can tangle messages in the lines, mixing one town's news with another's. It is not science, no, but it has a cosy foolishness. A blizzard makes the world feel enchanted enough for anything. Perhaps a love letter might arrive with a coal order attached. Perhaps a complaint about livestock might reach a bank president. The carriage warms steadily as the train gains speed. Beneath the comfort, there is always the awareness of cold. It presses against the windows. It clings to the seams around the doors. It waits between cars, where the vestibule shudders with every gust. That contrast makes the inside feel almost sacred. Warmth is never more precious than when winter keeps reminding you of its price. You rub your thumb over the plush armrest. The fabric feels worn, a little gritty with dust trapped from countless sleeves. How many people have leaned here, watching snow, rain, prairie dust, factory smoke, or spring fields? A railway carriage is never truly empty. Even when passengers leave, it carries gestures, it carries impatience, it carries crumbs, gossip, and the ghost of someone's forgotten cough drop. A porter comes through with a small step stool and a bundle of blankets. He moves with practiced balance, bending easily as the car sways. Some passengers have paid for sleeping berths, especially on lines using famous Pullman-style sleeping cars, where seats can be transformed into beds. Such cars are a mainstream marvel of 19th century travel, turning the long night into something almost civilized. Almost is doing rather heroic work there. Historians still argue whether these plush railway comforts truly softened class boundaries or simply polished them until they shone. You can feel the question in the car itself. Some passengers stretch under warm blankets, while others guard cheaper seats with folded arms. Everyone hears the same wheels. Not everyone has the same pillow. The train is democratic in motion, but not in comfort. Still tonight, the snow muffles differences a little. It lays its quiet hand over roof, field, and town. It gathers on the outer ledges of the windows, forming white ridges that tremble with the train's movement. When you breathe near the glass, frost blooms in delicate fern shapes along the edges. You trace one with your eyes, not your finger, because touching it would be needlessly cold. You are learning wisdom. The lamps sway as the track curves. For a moment, the carriage tilts into shadow, and every face changes. The feathered hat becomes a silhouette. The newspaper man becomes a statue of annoyance. The child with the orange falls asleep with one hand still open. Then the train straightens, and the light returns to its warm, uneven glow. Outside, the last station buildings are gone. Snowy open land surrounds you. The wheels settle into deeper rhythm. Iron meets iron beneath the floor. Steady as a heartbeat and less emotional. You let your shoulders lower, inch by inch. The day's stiffness loosens from your neck. Your coat warms against your body. Somewhere ahead, the locomotive throws sparks into the storm. Brief orange flecks that die before reaching the ground. Inside, you are held in a wooden room moving through winter. It feels impossible and yet ordinary. That is the quiet magic of this age. People grumble about schedules, drafts, prices, and luggage, while travelling faster than their grandparents could easily imagine. The miracle becomes an inconvenience, because human beings are very gifted that way. Yet tonight, with snow rushing past and heat breathing from the stove, you can still feel the wonder under the varnish. The porter lowers a shade halfway over a lamp near the end of the car. The light softens, conversations thin into murmurs. A few passengers prepare themselves for sleep with little private rituals. One folds a scarf into a pillow, another removes spectacles and tucks them into a hard case. The salesman locks his sample bag and checks the clasp twice. The mother wraps the orange peel in paper, saving the sweetness from staining her gloves. You shift against the seat and listen. The storm no longer sounds like weather alone. It becomes a veil through which the train passes, hissing at the roof, whispering at the glass, and brushing the carriage sides with soft insistence. The wind rises, then lowers, like someone breathing in a dream. Beneath it, the engine works with patient strength. You cannot see the fireman shoveling coal, but you imagine the furnace door opening, red light flashing over his face, the heat striking him while snow blinds the windows ahead. Your own eyelids grow heavier, though the night has barely begun. That is the trick of train travel. Motion persuades the body before the mind agrees. The seat rocks you without tenderness, but with persistence. The wheels count for you. The lamps glow for you. The snow erases the world you left behind, 1 white mile at a time. You are warm enough now, not perfectly warm, of course. A faint draught touches your ankle whenever the door at the end opens. The window keeps a cold presence beside your cheek. The air is dry from the stove, and your lips feel slightly chapped. Yet the carriage holds. The walls creak. The lamp flames tremble, and the passengers surrender little by little to the shared privacy of night travel. The train runs onward into the storm, carrying breath, luggage, secrets, oranges, newspapers, and half-formed dreams. You rest your head back and let the rhythm deepen. Outside, winter owns the fields. Inside, brass light glows on polished wood, and the long, snowy journey begins to fold itself around you like a heavy blanket. You sit deeper into the carriage as the train finds its pace, and the first surprise is how busy comfort can be. Nothing in this warm wooden room is still for long. The lamps tremble in their brackets. The luggage racks creak under boxes and carpet bags. Your own coat slides slowly from your knee, unless you keep one hand on it, because the train has opinions about gravity. The seat beneath you is upholstered in dark plush, worn smooth where generations of travellers have rested their shoulders. It has a faint smell of dust, tobacco, and old wool, not unpleasant, only deeply lived in. When you shift, the cushion gives with a dry whisper, then pushes back firmly. A modern bed would not feel threatened by such a seat. Still, tonight, it is yours. You take in the carriage by degrees, letting your eyes wander without hurry. The wood panelling glows a reddish-brown under the lamps. Brass hooks catch little points of light. Window cords hang beside frosted panes, stiff from age and coals. Above you, the rack holds a row of bags, bundled parcels, a hat box, and one mysterious package tied with string. Nobody seems to own it. Naturally, everyone notices it. A man 2 rows away watches it with suspicion. The heating stove stands near the end of the car, guarded by a small iron rail. Its black belly glows faintly at the seams, and its warmth spreads unevenly through the carriage. Close to it, passengers loosen scarves and dab their foreheads. Farther away, people tuck blankets tighter and angle their boots away from drafts. Comfort in the 1890s is not evenly distributed. It wanders about, choosing favourites. You feel this clearly at your feet. Your upper body is warm, almost drowsy, while your boots remain cool from the platform snow. The leather softens slowly as it dries, giving off that damp, earthy smell of winter footwear. You stretch your toes and feel the strange borderland between chill and relief. It is not exactly luxury. It is survival with upholsteries. The carriage sways, and you adjust with it. At first, every little movement calls for attention. Your shoulder rocks toward the window, your knee touches the seat frame, the window shade trembles like a nervous eyelid. Then your body begins to learn the railway's language. The sway becomes expected. The creak becomes familiar. You stop resisting every curve, which is wise, because the train will win. Across the aisle, the feathered hat has become a small monument to endurance. Its owner sits very upright, gloved hands folded over a handbag clasped like a treasure chest. She has wrapped a lap robe around her knees, a common travel item in cold weather, especially before reliable central heating made passengers less creative. The robe is dark, thick, and trimmed with a fringe that quivers whenever the wheels strike a joint in the rail. A young clerk beside the window is trying to read. He lifts his book closer to the lamp, then farther away, then closer again. The print refuses to remain still, which is rude but predictable. Many travellers carried books, magazines, and newspapers on long journeys. Yet railway motion could turn reading into a small battle. The clerk frowns at the page as though literature has become a personal enemy. You understand him completely. The conductor moves through again, not collecting tickets now, but checking that all is orderly. His boots make soft, confident thuds along the aisle. A chain of metal tools and keys hangs at his waist, chiming faintly against his coat. He smells of cold air, lamp oil, and the outside platform he has not fully escaped. When he passes, a breath of winter seems to follow him, then disappears into the warmer air. A small boy whispers a question to his mother, much too loudly for whispering. He asks if the train sleeps when people sleep. She tells him no. Trains are too busy for that. This seems sensible to him. He nods, closes his eyes, and immediately tries to stay awake. Children have always treated sleep as if it were a regrettable legal obligation. You turn toward the window again. The glass shows more of the carriage than the storm now, reflecting faces, lamps, and the pale oval of your own cheek. Beyond that reflection, snow streaks sideways into the dark. The movement makes it difficult to tell whether the world is passing you, or you are being gently pulled through a dream. Frost gathers in corners of the pane, each crystal pattern growing like a tiny winter garden. You lift one hand near the glass. Cold radiates from it, without needing to touch you. The warmth at your back answers from the stove. This contest between fire and snow happens all around the carriage, and every passenger lives inside its compromise. In the 1890s, railway companies often advertised speed, reach, and elegance, but the actual passenger remembered details like drafts under doors, soot near windows, and whether a blanket was worth its price. History is very grand until your ankle is cold. A porter appears with a broom and a quiet expression of duty. He sweeps slush and cinders from the vestibule area into a small pile, careful not to disturb anyone more than necessary. The broom bristles rasp against the floorboards, a dry, steady sound that fits beneath the rhythm of the wheels. He works with the calm of someone who knows travel creates dirt faster than dignity can explain. Near your seat, a little ash has settled on the window ledge. It is fine and grey, almost like powder. Coal smoke finds its way into everything, even in carriages meant to protect passengers from the harder parts of steam travel. You rub a fingertip lightly through the dust and leave a clean line. Then you regret it, because your fingertip is now dirty. Progress always has residue. Historians still debate how passengers judged railway comfort compared with older coach travel, because complaints and advertisements tell very different stories. Railway companies praised smoothness and convenience. Travellers wrote letters about noise, crowding, soot, delays, and the shocking behaviour of strangers. Both views can be true. A train could be a marvel and still make your spine question its life choices. The carriage offers small conveniences that reveal their own limits. A water cooler stands near one end, with a shared cup attached by a chain. You consider it. Then consider every mouth that may have met it. The thought is educational. Public health knowledge is growing during this era. But railway habits do not always hurry to catch up. For now, thirst can wait politely. Overhead, the luggage rack gives another creak. The mysterious package shifts an inch. Several eyes rise toward her at once. A man with silver whiskers clears his throat, as if preparing to accuse the parcel of misconduct. Nothing happens. The package remains silent, wrapped in brown paper, tied with string, and enjoying complete social power. A quirky railway custom comes to mind as you watch it. Some passengers tied bits of coloured ribbon to luggage, not for fashion, but to identify it among nearly identical trunks. Others scratched initials into leather, added painted stripes, or relied on the terrifying confidence of memory. Baggage checks existed, of course, yet confusion remained a loyal companion. Somewhere, some poor traveller has surely arrived with a stranger's shirts and a moral crisis. The train leans into a curve, and everyone sways together. A sleeping passenger wakes just enough to look offended. The newspaper man lowers his paper and peers around, perhaps hoping to identify who caused the curve. The child's head slips onto his mother's sleeve. Your own shoulder touches the wall panel, and you feel the vibration of the wheels through the wood. It is a living pulse, steady but never perfectly smooth. A faint whistle of air comes from the door seam. It rises and falls as the train gathers speed over open country. The sound is thin, almost musical, like someone testing one note on a flute. It reminds you that the carriage is not sealed against the world, it is only arguing with it. Snow, wind, and cold keep making their case. You unwrap your scarf from your neck and fold it into a small cushion. The wool smells faintly of soap, smoke, and the outdoors. When you place it between your head and the window frame, the relief is immediate, not soft enough for dreams, perhaps, but soft enough for surrender. You're beginning to understand the art of making a bed from whatever 19th century travel provides. The seat opposite is empty for the moment, so you stretch your legs carefully across the space. This is bold, but not scandalous. You keep your boots angled low, ready to retreat if someone approaches. The plush facing you is darker where many shoes have touched it. Evidence that other travellers were equally civilised until tired. Respectability has always weakened near midnight. The lamps burn with a steady yellow flame. Their glass chimneys are smudged, and the light they give is gentle rather than bright. Shadows pool beneath hats, under seats, and behind dangling straps. A woman whispers a prayer over a rosary. A man counts coins in his palm, then closes his fist around them. Somewhere, paper rustles. Somewhere, a stomach makes a brave public announcement. You pretend not to hear it. The porter returns and adjusts the damper on the stove. A warm metal smell deepens in the air. Coal settles inside with a soft collapse, and a red glow pulses briefly through the grate. You feel heat roll outward in a slow wave, touching your hands first, then your forehead. It is not the clean warmth of sunlight. It is smoky, heavy, and practical. The kind of warmth earned by shoveling black fuel into iron. Steam heating is appearing in some railway cars by this period, especially on better equipped lines, but older stoves still remain familiar in many places. Each method has its admirers and its critics. Stoves can be cosy, but they bring risks. Steam heat can be more even, but it depends on pipes, pressure, and maintenance. Passengers mostly want one thing: they want not to freeze, which is a reasonable position. The clerk finally gives up on reading. He places his book face down on his lap and closes his eyes with theatrical defeat. The title disappears under his hand. His mouth softens. The train has conquered another mind. You feel oddly pleased by this, as if the carriage has a team and you're on it. Snow thickens against the windows until the outside becomes nearly blank. The carriage grows more inward, more private, as though cut loose from geography. Without visible landmarks, the train could be crossing a field, a bridge, or the edge of the moon. You hear only the wheels, the stove, the low voices, and the occasional long cry of the whistle ahead. Each sound arrives softened by wood and warmth. You settle your hands in your lap and notice the texture of your gloves beside you. The leather has dried enough to feel stiff at the fingers. A faint salt mark appears near one seam. Your cuffs smell of melted snow. Your hair carries a trace of smoke. These small discomforts gather, but they no longer trouble you. They become proof that you are inside, while the storm remains outside. The carriage is not silent, but its sounds begin to layer themselves into calm. The wheels beat beneath every thought. The lamps answer with a hush. The stove clicks as metal expands and settles. The wind presses, fails, and presses again, around you. Strangers become silhouettes of patience, each adjusting to the same narrow warmth in different ways. You lean back against your folded scarf. Your breathing slows to match the train's long, rolling measure. The seat is still too firm, the draught still sly, and the night still young. Yet a sheltered drowsiness gathers around your shoulders in this wooden carriage of varnish, coal heat, and winter breath. You are not sleeping yet. You are learning how the train will teach you. You feel the engine more than you see it now, because its strength travels through every bolt and board. The locomotive is several cars ahead, hidden by the bend of the train and the thick white dark. Yet its labour reaches you clearly. It comes as a tremor under your boots, a pull through the couplings, and a deep pulse that seems to rise from the rails themselves. The carriage no longer feels like a room that happens to move. It feels attached to a great warm animal, one breathing smoke into winter and dragging its bright little household behind it. Every beat from the wheels carries a message from the engine. Every shiver in the wall reminds you of iron parts working together in the cold. You are not simply travelling, you are being hauled by fire. That thought is strangely comforting. Inside the locomotive cab, the night would feel very different from your sheltered seat. The engineer would stand near the controls, watching the track ahead through glass blurred by snow and steam. Beside him, the fireman would feed coal into the firebox shovelful after shovelful, opening the furnace door to a blast of red and orange heat. One man guides the beast, the other keeps its heart burning. The fireman's work is brutal in its rhythm, though passengers rarely think about it. Coal has to be lifted, thrown and spread and judged by eye. Too little fire, and the train loses power. Too much placed badly, and the boiler does not breathe efficiently. The cab can be freezing on one side and scorching on the other, which sounds less like comfort and more like being roasted by a snowman with a grudge. You imagine the shovel scraping coal from the tender. You imagine the firebox roaring open, throwing light across dark sleeves and tired hands. The smell up there would be sharp and metallic, full of smoke, hot oil, steam and cinders. Snow would blow through gaps and melt almost instantly on heated iron. The engine crew would hear little except the rush of air, the hammer of machinery, and their own shouted words. Steam locomotives in the 1890s depend on a simple wonder, made powerful by pressure and precision. Water heats inside the boiler until steam forms. Then that steam pushes pistons that turn the driving wheels. The idea sounds tidy when described gently. In practice, it involves heat, pressure, gauges, valves, grease, coal dust, and a great deal of confidence. Victorian engineering liked confidence. Sometimes it deserved it. A soft clank moves through the train. Then another. You feel the couplings between cars tighten and loosen as the locomotive adjusts to the grade. The pull comes in waves, subtle but distinct. Your body learns to expect them just as it learns the sway. The sound is not harsh in the carriage, only present, like distant kitchen pans in a large house. There is a domestic feeling to it, which is absurd and lovely. Iron labour becomes bedtime sound. Outside the window, the snow has thickened into rushing streaks. You can no longer distinguish field from sky. The train's lamps catch particles of ice and make them flash briefly before darkness takes them. Sometimes the window shows only your reflection, softened by frost. Sometimes a pale shape appears outside, perhaps a fence, perhaps a drift, perhaps nothing at all. The storm has become an artist with very limited colours. The whistle sounds again, longer this time. It begins low, then rises into a lonely note that spreads across the buried land. You feel it in the carriage walls, you feel it in your chest, where it leaves a slight ache. The whistle warns crossings as stations, workers, and any wandering creature foolish enough to argue with a train. It also speaks to passengers in a less practical way. It says that the engine is awake and that someone up ahead is watching. A farmer's crossing may be hidden under snow. A cattle track may lie somewhere near the rails. Telegraph poles may vanish into darkness, their wires humming faintly above the right-of-way. Railway crews relied on rules, signals, timetables, and trained judgment. But weather had a talent for making certainty look decorative. In a snowstorm, even familiar miles could become strange. Historians have long discussed how much 19th century passengers understood the technical risks of steam travel. Some seemed fascinated by locomotives, boilers, and speeds. Others treated the engine as a noisy servant best ignored. Diaries and newspapers suggest both awe and complaint lived side by side. You can understand that. Wonder is easy when your feet are warm. Anxiety returns when the car jolts. The carriage jolts just then, modestly, as if proving the point. A man wakes with a small snort and pretends he was merely thinking. Across the aisle, the woman with the feathered hat adjusts her posture without opening her eyes. The clerk's book slides half an inch across his lap, then stops. Your scarf pillow shifts against the window frame. You press it back into place and listen more closely. The wheels strike rail joints with a pattern that changes whenever speed or track surface changes. Sometimes the rhythm is brisk and neat. Sometimes it deepens, becoming heavier, as though the train has entered a stretch of older track. Rails in this period are stronger than earlier iron rails, with steel increasingly common on major lines, but track quality still varies by route, money, and maintenance. A smooth ride is never simply luck. It is labour laid beneath you. You feel the result of that labour in your bones. The floor hums steadily. The seat trembles lightly beneath your spine. The window glass taps in its frame. Your fingertips, resting on the wooden armrest, sense tiny vibrations that never fully stop. The train is 1,000 small motions pretending to be one large movement. A faint smell of hot oil drifts into the car when the door opens between sections of the train. It mingles with coal smoke, damp cloth, and orange peel still faintly lingering in the air. Someone mutters about the draft. Someone else pulls a blanket higher. The door closes, and the warm pocket returns. But the engine's smell remains for a few breaths, oily and dark, a reminder of machinery beyond the polished panelling. One quirky belief among some travellers is that certain engines had temperaments. Crews certainly knew locomotives by their habits, their sounds, and their troublesome little moods. An engine might be called a good steamer, a coal-eater, a slippery starter, or a stubborn climber. Passengers turn this into personality. Give human beings a machine with smoke and noise, and we immediately accuse it of having feelings. Tonight, your locomotive feels patient. It does not race wildly into the storm. It pulls with measured force, steady enough to soothe but strong enough to command the night. You picture its driving wheels turning through clouds of steam, rods flashing wet under the firelight, snow hissing where it strikes hot metal. Each revolution carries the train farther from the lamps of town and deeper into open winter. The boiler's pressure must be watched carefully. Gauges tell their quiet truths, and valves release excess steam when needed. The safety valve, especially, is one of those inventions that makes a person grateful to engineers who feared explosions more than they loved pride. Earlier railway history had seen dangerous boiler failures, and by the 1890s, design, inspection, and regulation had improved in many places. Even so, steam power always carried respect with it. Sensible people respected pressure. You shift your legs legs and feel warmth moving up from the carriage floor. It is not strong heat, but it is enough to soften the cold gathered in your boots. Beneath that warmth is the tremor from the engine, rising through the iron wheels, axles, springs, and wood. Your body rests while others work intensely for your rest. This is travel's hidden bargain. The salesman wakes and looks toward the window. Though there is little to see, his face is lined by the lamplight and shadow. For a moment, he seems to be listening for the engine too. Perhaps he knows the sound of grades and curves from years of routes. Perhaps he can tell when the train is climbing, coasting, or slowing for a signal. Frequent travellers learn a landscape through motion, not scenery. The whistle gives 2 shorter calls. The notes vanish quickly in the snow. The conductor appears at the far end of the car, bracing one hand against the wall as the train sways. He speaks quietly to the porter, and both glance toward the door. Nothing appears urgent, but the mere presence of railway staff makes passengers alert. People love not worrying until someone official looks thoughtful. A signal must be ahead, or perhaps a curve, or perhaps a crossing lost under the storm. The engine eases slightly. You feel the change before you name it. The wheels continue, but the pull softens, and the carriage seems to exhale. A few passengers glance around, then settle again. It is amazing how quickly the body detects alteration in rhythm, sleepy or not. You're an instrument now, tuned to iron. The train slows through a stretch of deeper snow. It does not stop. The engine pushes forward with a thicker sound, a working sound. More breath than song. Snow may gather along the rails, but the locomotive's pilot and weight help clear a path unless drifts grow too deep. In heavy storms, railways sometimes use specialized snow plows, including wedge plows and rotary plows on certain lines. The rotary kind, with spinning blades, was an especially dramatic answer to winter's nonsense. You picture such a machine eating snow like a furious mill wheel. It is a comic image until you remember the danger and effort behind it. Railroads in snowy regions needed gangs of workers, plows, shovels, switches kept clear, water towers protected, and stations ready for delays. Winter did not merely fall from the sky. It created work for everyone along the line. The engine gathers speed again, slowly. The rhythm returns with confidence, and shoulders around the carriage loosen. The feathered hat dips once, then steadies. The clerk's hand slides from his book to the seat cushion. The mysterious package overhead remains innocent, which is exactly what a suspicious package would do. You glance at it once and decide to let history handle it. Your attention drifts toward the locomotive's front again, though you cannot see it. You imagine the headlamp shining into the blizzard, its beam catching snowflakes so densely that light seems to strike a wall. The engineer peers through that moving brightness, reading the rails, the snowbanks, the shadows. He must know when to trust the track and when to mistrust the night. This is skill, not romance, though romance hangs on it like frost. A soft spray of cinders taps somewhere against the exterior. The sound is tiny, like sand on a drum. Steam travel was not clean. White cuffs, pale dresses, and fresh collars could suffer from soot, especially near open windows or in older equipment. Railway guides and household advice columns sometimes warned travellers about clothing, dust, and smoke. The age of steam made people mobile and slightly grimy. Elegance needed a brush. You breathe in and taste the air faintly. It has a mineral dryness from heat, a thread of coal, and the human closeness of enclosed travel. Not unpleasant, not fresh, simply shared. Everyone in the carriage is part of the atmosphere now, contributing wool, leather, soap, tobacco, paper, and sleep. Outside, the air is sharp enough to sting. Inside, it is thick enough to dream in. The locomotive continues its hidden labour. Its power feels less dramatic as minutes pass. Not because it weakens, but because you grow accustomed to it. This is how marvels become background. The boiler, pistons, rods, rails, and trained workers combine to move you through a storm, and your mind begins using the result as a lullaby. Humanity is funny that way. We build thunder, then nap beside it. The lamps dim slightly as a shadow crosses their glass, then brighten again. The stove clicks. Someone whispers a goodnight that may be meant for a child, a spouse, or the whole carriage. The words dissolve into wheel sound. You rest your head against the folded scarf and let the engine's pulse move through you. Far ahead, fire turns water into force, smoke folds into snow, iron wheels grip steel rails. Men in the cab watch, shovel, judge, and endure. In your carriage, warmth trembles softly against the cold, and every sound becomes part of one great breathing machine. You are carried by heat through a frozen world, and the night accepts you, slowly, mile by mile. You begin to notice the people around you not as strangers, exactly, but as fellow residents of the night. The carriage has become a narrow village, lit by brass lamps and governed by unwritten laws. Do not stare too long, do not speak too loudly, do not take more than your fair share of the armrest, unless you are asleep and therefore apparently immune to civilization. The train rocks through the storm, and everyone adjusts in small ways. Knees turn inward, shoulders settle, hands search pockets for handkerchiefs, tickets, sweets, or spectacles. Each traveller has brought some piece of ordinary life into this moving room, and the room accepts them all without much ceremony. The wheels do not care about class, mood, or luggage. They simply keep counting the miles. Across the aisle, the woman with the feathered hat opens her eyes. They are pale and sharp, not sleepy at all. She removes one glove finger by finger, then reaches into her handbag for a folded letter. The paper is thin, worn at the creases, and handled with care. She reads only a few lines before closing it again. Some messages are not meant to be consumed quickly, some must be visited. Beside the window, the young clerk has surrendered his book, but not his thoughts. His lips move silently now, perhaps rehearsing figures, a speech, or an apology. His collar is slightly too high, the kind that makes dignity look uncomfortable. He carries a square leather portfolio at his feet, carefully positioned where no careless boot can crush it. Ambition, you notice, has very neat corners. A family occupies the seats near the middle of the car. The mother holds the sleeping child close, while the father watches the aisle with tired protectiveness. Their luggage includes a patched carpet bag, a tin lunch pail, and a bundle wrapped in blue cloth. The child's mitten has fallen to the floor. Nobody notices except you. It lies palm upward, looking astonished by its own abandonment. You consider retrieving it, then the father leans down stiffly and picks it up with 2 fingers. He brushes dust from the wool, tucks it near the child's coat, and exhales through his nose. His face softens for half a second, then it becomes practical again. Family travel in a winter storm has no room for dramatic tenderness. It hides tenderness inside tasks. A travelling salesman sits 2 rows forward, awake now and quietly restless. He has a rounded face, a trimmed moustache, and the careful cheerfulness of someone paid to appear welcome. His sample case rests on his lap, locked but ready, as if business might bloom at midnight among half-sleeping strangers. He taps the case once, then stops himself. Even salesmanship must respect the hour. Mostly, commercial travellers were common figures on 19th century railways, carrying goods, catalogues, samples, gossip, and news between towns. They helped knit distant markets together. One hotel dining room and railway carriage at a time, their work could be tiring, lonely, and oddly sociable. A salesman might know hundreds of faces and still wake in the night unsure which town held his own toothbrush. Near the stove, a man in a dark coat speaks softly with another passenger. Their voices are too low for full words, but you catch fragments. Grain prices, a cousin in Ohio, A minister's opinion, snow on the branch line, conversation travels like steam through gaps, appearing briefly, then vanishing into the general warmth. You do not know their lives, but the fragments make them feel real. A nun sits near the far end, her black veil softened by lamplight. She holds a small parcel on her lap with both hands. Her posture is calm, yet her eyes remain attentive to every movement in the car. Beside her, a young woman in a plain brown coat leans against the wall, fighting sleep with heroic failure. Her head dips, rises, then dips again. Sleep is winning politely. The carriage smells different as the hours deepen. Earlier scents of snow and platform have faded. Now there is warm cloth, oil, coal smoke, paper, oranges, peppermint, and the faint sourness of tired bodies enclosed together. It is not elegant, but it is human. The air seems woven from everyone present, each person adding a thread. The conductor returns with a quiet step, pausing near a group of seats where an older man has spread himself too generously. One boot blocks the aisle. The conductor clears his throat. It is not a loud sound, yet it carries an entire institution behind it. The boot withdraws. Authority sometimes needs only a cough and a uniform. You feel a smile begin. Travel etiquette in the 1890s could be strict, especially in printed advice for respectable passengers. Do not crowd ladies, do not eat noisily, do not monopolize conversation, do not spit where others must see it. Which one dearly hopes did not require saying, and yet history suggests otherwise. Railway cars brought strangers into close contact, forcing manners to work under pressure. The feathered woman looks across at you for a moment, not unkindly, not warmly either. She has the gaze of someone who has measured hotel curtains, servants, relatives, and weather, and found most of them inadequate. Then she nods once. You return the nod. A complete social relationship has occurred. It is exhausting. A sudden laugh breaks from the salesman, quickly muffled. He's been listening to the grain conversation and cannot help himself. One of the men near the stove turns, raises an eyebrow, and the salesman offers an apologetic lift of his hand. The moment passes. The train keeps moving. In a carriage, small disturbances rise and fade like sparks. The child wakes briefly and asks where the moon has gone. The mother says the clouds have borrowed it. This answer seems acceptable, perhaps because it is poetic and impossible to verify. The child closes his eyes again. Outside, snow continues to swarm beyond the glass, hiding every landmark that might prove or disprove the moon's arrangements. You rest your fingers on the window ledge and feel the cold moving through the wood. It is a thin, dirty chill, quite different from the stove's heavy warmth. The carriage is full of such opposites: silk scarf and patched bag, business portfolio and lunch pail, prayer beads and sales samples. Nobody planned this arrangement. The timetable did it. Historians still argue whether railway travel created greater social mixing or merely placed old divisions into tighter compartments. Some lines separated passengers by ticket class, race, gender, or special accommodations depending on country and route. Even in shared cars, clothing, speech, luggage, and seating revealed rank quickly. Still, the railway created encounters that older, slower travel might have avoided. A nod across the aisle could carry more history than it appeared to hold. The young woman near the nun wakes with a start. Her parcel slips, and the nun catches it before it falls. The movement is quick and graceful, a small rescue performed without fuss. The young woman blushes and whispers, "Thanks." The nun smiles faintly. Then both return to stillness, parcel secured between them. Kindness often travels best when it does not announce itself. The salesman finally unlocks his case, but only a little. He removes a small tin and offers peppermint drops to the men near the stove. One accepts, another refuses, then accepts when nobody comments on the refusal. The tin comes down the row in a quiet chain. When it reaches you, The salesman gives a hopeful nod, as if mint itself might improve the reputation of commerce. You take one. The peppermint is cool and hard on your tongue, startling in the warm, smoky air. Its sweetness clears your mouth and brightens your breathing. For a moment, coal smoke retreats. The smell of wool and lamp oil softens. The taste feels clean, almost sup enough to belong outside with the snow. You let it dissolve slowly, grateful for this tiny winter luxury. The salesman whispers that the drops are made by a concern in New York. Then he catches himself and smiles sheepishly, even half asleep. He cannot stop advertising. You admire the discipline, or perhaps fear it. A man who can promote peppermint in a snowstorm is not easily defeated. A quirky tidbit often repeated by railway travellers concerns the secret lives of porters and conductors. Passengers believed them able to remember impossible details, who preferred which berth, which trunk belonged where, which traveller snored, and who tried to avoid paying extra. Some of that reputation was deserved. Railway workers developed astonishing memory because confusion punished everyone. A misplaced bag could become a tragedy in 3 acts. The porter demonstrates such memory when he stops beside the family and quietly asks whether they still need hot water at the next major stop. The mother looks surprised, then grateful. She had asked him earlier. Perhaps on the platform, perhaps in a hurried moment you never saw. He remembered, in the dim carriage. Service becomes personal not because it is grand, but because it is precise. Snow strikes the windows harder for a while. The sound rises from whisper to soft hiss, then to a grainy brushing like dry rice poured over glass. Faces turn toward it, each briefly lifted from private thought. The storm is the one passenger nobody invited, yet everyone must acknowledge it walks beside the train with endless patience. The old man near the aisle removes his spectacles and polishes them on a handkerchief. He looks at the lenses, dissatisfied, and polishes them again. Perhaps the problem is not the glass. Perhaps the world itself has become unclear. Snow has that effect. So does age, so does midnight inside a moving train. When every life seems suspended between departure and arrival, you wonder where each passenger is going. The clerk may be returning to a city office with figures in his portfolio. The family may be moving west, visiting kin, or escaping some expense nobody mentions. The feathered woman might be travelling to a funeral, a wedding, or a house where someone has failed to prepare her preferred room. The nun may be carrying medicine, letters, or something more ordinary than your imagination allows. The truth is probably quieter. Most journeys are not grand. People travel for work, duty, illness, marriage, grief, weather, wages, and hope. The railway gathers these reasons without asking them to become dramatic. It only asks for tickets, luggage checks, and tolerance for noise. Yet when the storm closes around the carriage, ordinary motives begin to glow. Every destination becomes a candle hidden in the snow. A man near the door sneezes 3 times. After the first sneeze, several passengers glance up. After the second, everyone is aware. After the third, the conductor murmurs a blessing without turning around. The man looks embarrassed and settles deeper into his collar. Illness in a closed carriage is a delicate subject. Nobody wishes to be unkind. Nobody wishes to breathe too enthusiastically either. The train sways again, and the lamps answer with slow arcs of light. Shadows move over cheeks, hands, parcels, and polished shoes. The carriage becomes almost theatrical, each traveller briefly revealed, then hidden. You are both audience and actor, tucked among the props of 19th century travel tickets, bags, scarves, gloves, newspapers, tin cups, and stubborn hats. The mysterious package above finally reveals its owner. A thin gentleman wakes suddenly, looks up, and pulls it down with anxious care. Several passengers pretend not to have been watching. He unties one corner and checks inside. You glimpse knitting wool, a wrapped loaf, and what appears to be a small wooden toy horse. The drama collapses into tenderness. Everyone returns to being respectable. You feel sleep pressing near but not arriving. The company of strangers keeps you gently alert, and their breaths, small gestures, and private burdens fill the carriage with quiet motion. Nobody tells a full story, yet every person suggests one. That's enough for the night. Too much knowledge would be impolite. Outside, the storm keeps erasing the countryside. Inside, the carriage village settles into its shared hush. The salesman closes his tin, the mother tucks the mitten more securely, the clerk finally sleeps with his chin lowered. The feathered woman folds her letter beneath one gloved hand. The nun closes her eyes, still holding the parcel. You sit among them, warmed by the stove and rocked by the rails, feeling how travel turns strangers into temporary witnesses. For these dark miles, you share breath, heat, sound, and the fragile courtesy of people passing through weather together. The train carries every secret without opening it, and the snow presses softly at the glass. You turn your attention to the window, where the night has become a sheet of living frost. The glass no longer offers a clean view of the world, it holds layers instead. Your reflection, the carriage lamps, the pale scratch of snow, and the delicate white patterns growing from every cold corner. The storm is outside, but it has left its handwriting on the pane. You lean closer, careful not to touch it with your cheek. The cold comes through without permission, a quiet warning from the other side. Frost feathers spread across the glass in thin branching shapes, like ferns, lace, or tiny white rivers. Each pattern seems too careful to be accidental. Winter can be a surprisingly patient decorator. When it is not busy freezing your nose, the carriage glows behind you in warm reflection. Brass lamps float in the window like golden fruit. Heads and shoulders appear as shadows among them, softened and doubled by the curved glass. Your own face looks calmer there than you feel. Perhaps lamplight is flattering. Perhaps travel has already rubbed the sharp edges from your thoughts. Outside, nothing holds still. Snow streams past in pale slanted lines, sometimes thick enough to erase everything beyond the pane. Then the wind shifts, and for a breath, you glimpse a dark fence post, a bare tree, a small embankment, or the ghost of a telegraph pole. The world appears in fragments, never long enough to become scenery. It is more like memory, arriving in broken pieces. Inside, the warmth presses against your back. It has a weight of its own now, built from coal, wool, breathing bodies, and the slow patience of the stove. The air smells of heated varnish, lamp oil, damp cuffs, and peppermint fading on your tongue. Somewhere under it all sits the earthy scent of coal smoke. Never fully absent, steam travel does not let you forget who is paying for the comfort. You raise your hands and feel the difference between them. The hand nearer the window is cool across the knuckles. The hand resting closer to your body is warmer, almost loose with drowsiness. This small division feels oddly fascinating. Half of you belongs to the sheltered carriage, half listens to the storm. The boundary is only a pane of glass, and that pane is doing heroic work. A gust strikes the side of the train, and snow rasps across the window. The sound is soft but urgent, like fingernails drawn through dry paper. A few passengers stir. The mother tightens her hold on the child without waking. The salesman opens one eye, decides against responsibility, and closes it again. Wise man! The stove gives a small click. Its warmth answers the gust with steady indifference. You can feel it on your ankles now, where the leather of your boots has finally surrendered its chill. The soles remain damp, but the worst cold has lifted. Your toes flex comfortably inside thick stockings. It is a humble pleasure. the return of feeling to the feet, but humble pleasures are often the ones that keep civilization from collapsing. In many railway carriages of the late 19th century, insulation was limited by the modern standards. Double glazing was uncommon, drafts were familiar, and passengers often managed comfort with layers, lap robes, foot warmers, and strategic seating. Some wealthier travellers could enjoy better appointments, especially in sleeping cars. Yet even luxury had to negotiate with winter. Snow did not respect upholstery. You watch breath marks bloom and fade near the window. A passenger across from you exhales while sleeping, and the moisture gathers briefly against the colder glass nearby. Then the frost claims it. The carriage is full of invisible exchanges like that. Warm lungs meet cold surfaces. Wet wool dries into the air. Coal heat lifts moisture from boots and hems. Everyone contributes to the climate of this narrow moving room. The lamps make the varnished wood shine like honey. Every panel seems deeper in the low light, full of red and brown tones polished by hands, sleeves, cleaning cloths, and years. The shine gives the carriage a sense of importance, as though you travel inside a cabinet made for precious things. Then a small flake of soot lands on your cuff. History clears its throat. You brush it away. Outside. The cold is not merely temperature. It is space, silence, and distance. It lies over fields, roofs, frozen roads, sleeping animals, stacked timber, and streams locked under ice. Somewhere beyond the white rush, a farmhouse may be showing one lamp in a kitchen window. Somewhere a barn door may be rattling against its latch. Somewhere a horse may be standing very still, thinking deep horse thoughts about hay. The train makes those unseen places feel both near and unreachable. You pass through their night without entering it. The warm window frames them as possibility. Then snow wipes them away. This is part of the enchantment. You're moving through hardship while touching none of it directly. A little guilt arrives with the comfort, but it is sleepy and does not stay long. Historians still disagree about how passengers experience this separation between moving comfort and outdoor danger. Some accounts emphasize triumph over nature, with railways conquering distance, weather, and isolation. Others reveal how fragile that triumph could be, especially when storms block tracks, froze switches, or stranded trains. The truth seems to sit somewhere in the frost between pride and dependence. The train is powerful, but winter is not impressed. The window rattles lightly in its frame. You place your fingertips on the wooden sill beneath it and feel the vibration. Cold collects there more sharply than on the armrest. The varnish is smooth, but the edge has tiny rough places where age and use have raised the grain. You press your thumb over one nick in the wood. Perhaps a trunk struck it. Perhaps a child scratched it with a toy. Perhaps nobody knows, which is history's favourite answer. The feathered woman wakes enough to pull her shawl higher. In the reflected glass, her movement looks slow and ghostly. She adjusts the letter beneath her hand and settles again, her expression softening in sleep. The hat feathers, once rather commanding, now droop with fatigue. Even authority needs rest. Even feathers cannot remain dramatic all night. The clerk has slipped sideways against the wall, his high collar tilted at an unforgiving angle. You suspect he will regret that posture. His book lies closed on his lap, one finger still trapped between pages. It is a bookmark made of ambition and exhaustion. The train rocks him gently, making the lamp shadow move across his face. The family's child opens his eyes, not fully awake. He stares at the frosted window as if seeing a private kingdom. His mother whispers something you cannot hear. He lifts one hand and points at the ice patterns. She nods. Perhaps she tells him they are flowers. Perhaps she says they are stars. Perhaps she says nothing meaningful at all, because mothers are allowed to improvise at midnight. A charming old belief held that frost patterns on windows could foretell weather, luck, or the mood of the household. Fern shapes might mean continued cold, thick flowers might promise a harder freeze, and clear patches might invite optimism from people desperate for signs. It was not reliable meteorology, of course, but when you're tired and surrounded by snow, a window can become an oracle. You look at the frost again and let the idea be true for a moment. The branching crystals suggest patience, the white ridges suggest silence, the clear oval near your breath suggests a way forward. Temporary but real. Then, the glass fogs again, and the oracle becomes a window with poor ventilation. Still, it tried. The train passes a cutting, and the sound changes. Snowy banks rise close outside, throwing back the roar of wheels and wind. The carriage grows louder for several seconds, enclosed by earth and snow. Then the track opens again, and the sound loosens into the wider night. You feel the difference in your chest, as if the train has moved from a corridor into a room. A draft slips along the floor and curls around your ankles. You draw your coat closer over your lap. The fabric is heavy, warm, and slightly rough beneath your palms. Its outer edge remains cool where it faced the window, while the folds near your body have softened with heat. You tuck one side under your thigh, creating a small fortress of cloth. Very dignified, very necessary. The porter moves quietly through the dimness, lowering a shade near a lamp that burns too brightly for sleep. He uses 2 fingers and a practiced touch. The light softens at once, becoming more amber than yellow. Faces blur further. The carriage exhales into deeper calm. Outside, the snow seems even colder by contrast, as if darkness itself has thickened around the train. You realize that warmth has sounds. It is the stove ticking as metal settles. It is cloth shifting as passengers nestle deeper. It is the soft drag of a blanket over a knee. It is a muffled cough, a sleepy sigh, and the tiny clink of a lamp chimney. Cold has sounds too, sharper and thinner. Wind at the seams, ice against glass, snow under wheels at crossings. The train holds both kinds and lets them answer each other. The smell of the carriage changes once more as someone opens a small packet of food, bread perhaps, or a biscuit wrapped in cloth. The scent is faint but comforting, dry and grainy with a trace of butter. No one complains. Night travel makes people tolerant of small meals, provided crumbs do not become ambitious. The packet closes, and the smell remains like a friendly memory. You let your eyes half close. Through your latches, the lamp reflections in the window stretch into long golden lines. The frost turns them soft at the edges. Snow rushes beyond. But now it seems slower, perhaps because your mind has slowed first. The boundary between warm inside and cold outside becomes less like a wall and more like a song with 2 notes. One note glows, one note freezes. Together they carry you. The engine whistle sounds distant, muffled by the storm. Its call is gentler from here, wrapped in snow before it reaches the carriage. You do not tense at it now. It has become part of the winter music, a voice far ahead checking the darkness. The wheels continue beneath you with their steady pattern, never perfectly even, never truly random. Outside, the train crosses a small bridge. You know it from the hollow change in sound, the brief drum beneath the wheels, and the sense of air opening under the floor. You see nothing but white, yet for a moment you imagine black water below, slow and icy between banks. Then the bridge is gone, and earth returns beneath the rails. This is how the journey teaches you to sense what cannot be seen. A change in echo becomes a bridge, a deeper pull becomes a climb, a softer rhythm becomes drifted track. The window may be nearly blind, but the train speaks through sound, pressure, warmth, and touch. You listen with more than your ears. You sit with your coat tucked around you, hands resting loose, face turned toward the frost. The carriage holds its amber centre against the storm. It is not perfect shelter, but it is enough. Enough is a beautiful word at night. Outside. The snow keeps rushing past. Cold and endless, inside warmth gathers in small human circles, and you let that contrast cradle your thoughts. You begin to understand that railway hunger is different from ordinary hunger. It arrives softly at first, somewhere beneath the rhythm of the wheels, then grows bolder when someone opens a parcel. The night has stretched long enough for stomachs to begin making polite inquiries. Warmth, motion, and wakefulness have a way of turning a simple biscuit into a meaningful event. The carriage has become dimmer, but not fully asleep. A few passengers remain watchful, wrapped in shawls and private thoughts. Others drift in and out, waking whenever the train lurches, whenever the stove clicks, or whenever their own necks object to the architecture of the seat. You feel that complaint in your shoulders now. The body is a loyal friend, but it sends letters. Near the middle of the car, the family begins a quiet meal. The father opens the tin pail with careful hands, trying to silence the little metal snap. He does not succeed. The sound travels brightly through the carriage, and several people pretend not to notice. From inside he takes slices of bread wrapped in cloth, a bit of cheese, and something dark that might be cold meat or cake. At this hour, both are respectable. The smell reaches you a moment later. Bread first, dry and yeasty, then cheese, sharp and comforting, then a faint sweetness from the cloth, perhaps jam leaking from some hidden corner. The child wakes just enough to accept food with solemn dignity. His mother breaks the bread into smaller pieces, brushing crumbs from his coat before they can become part of him permanently. Eating on trains carries its own manners. You must not spread your elbows too widely. You must not unwrap anything with theatrical enthusiasm. You must chew as if civilization depends on your restraint. Printed travel advice often reminded passengers to avoid strong odours and messy foods, which suggests the warnings were not entirely theoretical. There is always one person with onions. History does not name him, but we know. A porter appears with a tray of cups, moving carefully as the train sways. The cups are thick, plain, and practical, meant to survive more than to charm. Steam rises from them in faint curls, tea, coffee, or hot water, depending on what a passenger has asked for and what the train can reasonably provide. The smell of coffee enters first, dark and bitter, cutting through coal smoke like a confident official. You accept a cup of tea when it is offered. The porter pours from a metal pot, and the liquid trembles dangerously near the rim. You hold the cup with both hands. Its heat seeps into your fingers, through the skin, into the joints, into that quiet place in the mind where cold had been sitting. The cup is almost too hot at first, then it becomes perfect. You breathe over it slowly. The tea smells tannic, plain, and slightly metallic from the pot. No delicate ceremony lives here. This is travelling tea, made for warmth and obedience. It asks nothing except that you drink before it cools. You take a careful sip, feeling heat slide down your throat and settle in your chest. Outside, snow scours the glass. Inside, the tea creates a private hearth no wider than your hands. Dining cars existed on many important routes by the late 19th century, especially in North America and parts of Europe, and they could offer surprisingly elaborate meals. White cloths, waiters, printed menus, and proper dishes appeared on better services. Yet many travellers still relied on baskets, station vendors, and food packed from home. Railway progress did not abolish sandwiches, it merely gave them more interesting scenery. The salesman, revived by the scent of coffee, asks the porter whether there is anything stronger to eat. The porter gives him the look of a man who has been asked to produce a roast goose from the luggage rack. After a pause, he says there may be biscuits and apples farther along the train. The salesman nods as if this is a promising business opportunity rather than a snack. A man near the stove produces a paper twist of salt and offers it to the family. They accept with thanks. The salt travels from hand to hand, precious in its smallness. The child sprinkles too much on one piece of bread and looks immediately betrayed by chemistry. His mother trades pieces with him without comment. This is love, disguised as a correction in seasoning. You sip your tea again and listen to the cups. They clink lightly against saucers and seat frames. A spoon stirs somewhere, ringing gently. Paper unwraps, bread tears, an apple skin cracks under someone's teeth. These sounds are small, but in the softened carriage they become intimate. Food reminds everyone that bodies continue their quiet demands, even in snow, even on iron rails, even during grand historical atmosphere. A vendor may have sold food through a station window not long ago, though the storm has swallowed the platform memory. In many railway journeys, passengers bought pies, sandwiches, fruit, hard-boiled eggs, and questionable coffee during short stops. Some station meals became famous, others became warnings. The phrase railway sandwich did not always inspire poetry, unless the poet was angry. A quirky tale from train travel concerns passengers carrying emergency foods that revealed regional habits with charming stubbornness. One person might bring smoked fish, another gingerbread, another pickled eggs, another a carefully wrapped fruitcake dense enough to stop conversation. The carriage became a travelling cupboard of local tastes. When delays came, these private stores could make someone suddenly popular. Nothing was a reputation like having extra cake in a blizzard. The feathered woman opens a small silver case and removes a sugared lozenge. She does not eat bread, at least not where anyone can observe the process. Her movements remain precise, even sleepy, as though etiquette itself is keeping her upright. The silver case catches lamplight and flashes briefly in the window. She closes it with a tiny click that sounds final and refined. You glance down at your own hands around the cup. The heat has reddened your fingers. A drop of tea slides over the rim and darkens your glove where it lies on your lap. You dab at it with a handkerchief, then decide the stain may join soot, melted snow, and all the other souvenirs of 19th century travel. Cleanliness is a goal, reality is damp. Historians still debate how railway dining changed social habits, because eating among strangers challenged older ideas of privacy and respectability. Some travellers enjoyed the shared novelty, while others disliked public meals in crowded cars. Dining cars created new rituals, with timed sittings, menus, service hierarchies, and expectations about dress and conduct. A meal on rails was not only food, it was society trying to balance soup at speed. The train gives a long, smooth sway, and the tea in your cup leans toward the edge. You steady it just in time. Across from you, the clerk wakes enough to rescue his portfolio from a falling crumb. He blinks at the family meal, at the cups, at the dim carriage, and seems briefly unsure which century he has entered. Then he accepts coffee from the porter and becomes human again. The porter returns with apples and biscuits wrapped in a clean cloth. The apples are small, firm, and red beneath a dull winter polish. The biscuits look hard enough to have legal standing. You take one of each, because night travel encourages optimism. The apple is cold to the touch, almost shocking after the warm cup. Its skin smells fresh, cellar sweet, and faintly woody. You bite into it. The crack is loud enough to make you pause. The flesh is sharp, juicy, and cold, waking your mouth at once. It tastes of orchards locked under winter, and barrels stored in cool rooms. The biscuit, by contrast, requires patience. It is dry, plain, and determined. Dipped into tea, however, it softens into something kind. Many difficult personalities improve with tea. The salesman buys 2 biscuits and begins speaking quietly with the porter about supply, route, and whether certain towns prefer sweet goods. He cannot help turning appetite into market research. The porter answers in short phrases, patient but unimpressed. The exchange is oddly soothing. Commerce murmurs beneath the snow, alive even near midnight. At the far end, The nun shares something from her parcel with the young woman beside her. It appears to be a slice of dark bread wrapped in linen. The young woman accepts after a little protest. The kind politeness requires. They eat slowly, heads bent near the same pool of lamplight. No sermon accompanies the bread. None is needed. The smell of hot coffee strengthens when the conductor takes a cup. He stands near the door, drinking carefully, his gaze unfocused but alert. Conductors and porters occupied complicated roles in railway life, responsible for order, comfort, safety, mien, and often the emotional weather of a carriage. They had to be firm without seeming harsh, helpful without becoming servants to every whim. A difficult art, especially with cold coffee. The conductor lowers his cup and speaks briefly to a passenger worried about a connection. His voice is calm, but not falsely certain. Snow may delay the train, a branch service may wait, or it may not. Messages may be sent from a station ahead. He explains without drama, using the steady tone people trust when they cannot control anything. The passenger nods, dissatisfied but soothed. The train passes through another patch of rougher track, and cups tremble in hands. The carriage becomes a room full of people protecting beverages. Knees brace, wrists stiffen, brows lower in concentration. It is a scent athletic contest, and nearly everyone wins. A single drop of coffee lands on the salesman's cuff. He studies it sadly, as if betrayed by an old friend. You take another sip of tea and feel sleep move closer. Warm drink, heavy air, full stomach, rocking carriage. These are ancient allies of drowsiness. Your thoughts loosen. The people around you soften into gestures rather than identities. The child chewing slowly, the clerk warming both hands around coffee, the woman closing her silver case, the porter folding the empty cloth. Outside, the meal is possible, only snow, wind, iron, and the dark line of track ahead. The contrast gives each bite more weight. The bread, apple, biscuit, and tea feel not merely eaten, but received. They are small acts of resistance against cold distance. Human beings have always done this. We cross difficult places, then make crumbs. A station may lie miles ahead, with kitchens, banking fires, and night workers listening for the train. Perhaps there will be fresh water there. More coal, messages, news, and someone carrying a tray too quickly along an icy platform. Perhaps the storm will allow only a brief pause. For now, the carriage is enough. Its meal has passed through quietly, leaving warmth and sleepy gratitude behind. You place the empty cup where the porter can collect it. Your fingers still remember its heat. The apple core rests in a scrap of paper, neat and humble. The biscuit has become less an object than a dry memory. Around you, passengers settle again, fed just enough to grow quiet. The lamps glow lower, reflected in the darkened windows. The stove hums with stored warmth. The wheels resume their deep, patient counting beneath the floor. You lean back, tasting tea and apple, while the train carries its little rituals through the snow. Outside, winter has the fields. Inside, bread has been broken. Cups have warmed hands, and the night becomes softer around the edges. The first sign of trouble is not dramatic. No crash, no shout, no sudden plunge into darkness. It is simply a change in the rhythm beneath your feet, a slight thickening of motion, as though the train has begun pushing through something heavier than night. The wheels continue, but their confident music grows muffled. The carriage leans forward into patience. You lift your head from the folded scarf and listen. Around you, others do the same in small ways. The clerk opens one eye. The father near the family turns toward the window. The feathered woman sits straighter, instantly prepared to disapprove of weather as a personal failing. The lamps sway gently, casting slow gold over anxious faces. The train is slowing. Not stopping yet. Slowing with effort. You feel the engine pull harder, then ease, then pull again. The couplings answer with dull metal sounds that pass along the cars. Snow hisses against the windows in thick bursts. no longer brushing lightly, but pressing as if the whole storm has decided to lean on the train. Outside, the glass shows only whiteness and the ghostly reflection of the carriage. A whisper moves through the seats. Drift, grade, signal, blocked track. People offer possibilities in low tones, each one less helpful than the last. This is one of humanity's favourite activities during uncertainty. We name things softly until we feel involved. The conductor enters before speculation can become a public sport, and his presence steadies the carriage at once. He walks with measured care, one hand near the seat backs. His face is calm, but his coat carries fresh snow at the shoulders. That detail tells everyone enough. He speaks quietly to the nearest passengers, then lets the message travel in a controlled way. The train has encountered deep snow across the line. The crew is proceeding carefully. There is no immediate danger. No immediate danger. The phrase settles over the carriage with mixed results. It is meant to comfort, of course, and it does, mostly, yet it also opens a small door in the mind, behind which danger is waiting politely with its hat in hand. You feel your own body grow alert. Not frightened exactly, but awake in a sharper way. Sleep retreats down the aisle. The stove continues its steady heat, almost offensively relaxed. Its metal sides glow faintly, and a soft smell of coal rises whenever the damper shifts. The warmth becomes more noticeable now, because you imagine the outside more clearly. You picture snow packed against the lower boards, rails buried under drifts, switches stiff with ice, and the locomotive's pilot pushing into white resistance. The storm is no longer scenery, it is an obstacle. Steam locomotives could handle winter, but not magically. Snow might pile into cuttings, harden around points, freeze brake gear, or hide signals from view. Railway workers had tools, rules, and experience. Yet a severe storm could humble even a proud mainline. The late 19th century saw impressive snowfighting equipment in many regions, but every mile still depended on human judgment. Weather always reserves the right to be annoying. The train slows further. A deep shudder passes through the car as the brakes take hold. Iron squeals softly somewhere ahead. Restrained by distance and snow, your cup, empty but not yet collected, slides against the seat frame. You catch it with your foot before it falls, a small victory. The carriage answers with creaks, sighs, and the rustle of passengers gathering themselves from drowsy positions into upright concern. Outside, the world barely moves now. Snow no longer streaks sideways past the window. It swirls, thick and confused, around a train almost at rest. You can see the edge of a drift rising near the lower pane, white and close. The sight is quietly astonishing. You are inside warmth, lamplight, and human breath. While inches away winter is piling itself into walls, the train stops. For a moment, the stillness is louder than motion. The wheels no longer count. The floor no longer hums in the same way. The carriage seems to float, held in silence by snow. Then smaller sounds appear. Newly exposed, someone swallows. The stove ticks. A child breathes through a stuffy nose. Far ahead, steam releases with a long, weary sigh. You had not realized how much the rhythm had been holding you. Without it, everyone feels more separate. The shared cradle has paused, and each passenger returns to his or her own worry. The father looks at the conductor. The young woman near the nun grips her parcel. The salesman checks his watch, then checks it again, as if the first look lacked moral force. The watch offers time, it does not offer progress. Useless little genius. A porter opens the end door briefly, and cold rushes in like a living thing. It strikes your ankles first, then your hands, then the inside of your nose. The lamps tremble as the air moves. Snowflakes whirl through the doorway, glittering madly before melting on the floorboards. The smell of outside enters too, sharp, metallic, and clean beneath the coal smoke. The door closes, and the carriage warms again slowly. Passengers tuck blankets tighter and look offended by the temperature. You cannot blame them. Cold that enters a warm carriage feels like a breach of contract. Still, the brief glimpse through the doorway stays with you. A white corridor between cars, a lantern swinging, boots on icy steps, men moving in the storm with shoulders bent. The conductor explains more. A section of drift lies ahead where the line passes through a shallow cutting. The engine crew is testing whether the locomotive can push through without assistance. If needed, workers may clear part of the track by hand, or the train may wait for a plough from farther up the line. He does not say this with alarm. He says it like a man describing laundry. That steadiness helps. A mainstream fact of winter railroading sits behind his words. In snowy regions, railways often employed dedicated crews to clear points, shovel drifts, and maintain passage through difficult sections. Snow fences were also used along vulnerable stretches, set back from the track to slow wind and cause drifting before snow reached the rails. Such fences look humble, but humility can be excellent engineering. You imagine those fences beyond the window, perhaps buried now, perhaps doing their best under impossible conditions, strips of wood against a continent of snow, human planning meeting weather with slats and nails. There is something admirable about it, and something faintly comic. Winter brings the sky down in billions of flakes, and people respond with carpentry. The engine tries again. You feel it before you hear it. A deep strain travels through the train, tightening every coupling. The carriage shifts forward a few inches. Steam roars ahead, muffled by cars and snowfall. The wheels under you jerk once, then hesitate. The locomotive seems to gather itself like a horse leaning into a heavy load. Passengers hold their breath, absurdly, as if breath weighs enough to matter. The train moves a little, then stops again. A collective exhale fills the carriage, not despair, not yet. More like disappointment dressed for church. The salesman clicks his tongue softly. The feathered woman gives the window a look that could curdle milk. The child wakes and asks if the train is tired. His mother says yes, perhaps a little. This answer is perfect. The train is tired, so is everyone. Outside, lanterns appear near the front of the train, small yellow blurs moving through white air. Men walk beside the cars, their shapes thickened by coats and snow. One carries a shovel over his shoulder, another bends near the track. Their boots sink deep, and they move with the slow determination of people whose work cannot be hurried by worry. Wind tugs at their coats, but the lanterns keep bobbing. A fringe belief among some passengers held that locomotives could sense danger in storms, almost like horses refusing a bad road. Practical railway men would likely raise an eyebrow at that. Engines obey steam, metal, and crew, not instinct. Yet as you sit in the halted carriage, feeling the machine pause before the drift, the belief becomes understandable. When iron hesitates, imagination gives it nerves. The porter comes through with extra blankets, distributing them where needed. He says very little, and that is wise. Comfort travels better than explanation. You receive a folded blanket of coarse wool, smelling faintly of storage, soap, and smoke. It scratches your palms as you draw it over your lap. The wait is immediate and reassuring. The clerk asks whether the delay will be long. The conductor answers that it is difficult to know until the drift is cleared or broken. He uses those exact sorts of careful words railway people rely upon when certainty has gone outdoors. The clerk nods as though he appreciates precision, but his expression suggests betrayal by the entire concept of winter. Historians still argue over how ordinary passengers judge delays in the railway age. Some saw them as failures of companies that had promised mastery over distance. Others accepted them as part of travel, especially in harsh seasons and remote districts. Letters, diaries, and newspapers show irritation, fear, resignation, and even excitement. A delay could ruin business or become a story told for years. The old man near the aisle begins telling one already. He recalls a train held by snow for 18 hours, or perhaps 24, depending on how much attention he receives. Passengers shared pies, sang hymns, and one gentleman proposed marriage to a woman he had met that morning. The old man admits he does not know whether she accepted. This ruins the tale slightly, but not completely. The salesman says she probably accepted if he had food. A few soft laughs rise. The tension loosens. Laughter in a halted carriage is a small stove of its own, giving off warmth without coal. Even the feathered woman looks as if she might approve of the remark under less severe circumstances. Outside, the workers continue in the snow, their lanterns moving like patient fireflies trapped in a flour sack. The train jolts again as the engine reverses a short distance. You feel the backward motion with surprise, a gentle retreat through the couplings. The conductor explains that the engineer may take a run at the drift, carefully, not wildly. This sounds both sensible and deeply 19th century. When blocked, gather steam and try again. It is practically a philosophy with a smokestack. The locomotive backs the train slowly. The carriage moves through darkness, only a few yards, perhaps more. Then it pauses. Steam builds ahead. You cannot see the cab, but you can imagine the engineer watching the signal from a worker's lantern, the fireman feeding the furnace, the boiler readying its breath. The whole train seems to crouch, then forward. The engine pulls hard and the carriage surges into motion. Snow thumps beneath and beside the cars. The wheels turn with a muffled roar. Passengers sway back, hands catching seats and armrests. Your blanket slips, and you grab it with one hand while bracing the cup with the other. The train drives into the drift with a long, grinding push. For several seconds, it is all vibration. Then the motion slows. Then, blessedly, continues. A murmur spreads through the car as the train breaks through the heavier snow. Not celebration, exactly. People are too tired and dignified for that. But relief moves from face to face like lamplight. The father smiles at the child. The clerk closes his eyes briefly. The salesman pats his sample case as if it helped. The feathered woman adjusts her shawl with the air of someone who expected no less. The wheels regain their pattern, uneven at first, then stronger. Snow still drags at the train, but the deep obstruction has yielded. The lanterns outside fall behind. Workers climb aboard or return to their posts, carrying cold with them in their coats. The door opens once more, letting in snow scent, iron air, and the sound of men breathing hard. Then it closes. Warmth gathers again, slowly and gratefully. You keep the coarse blanket over your knees. It scratches, but you forgive it. The carriage has changed. Everyone has seen the storm reach in and slow the great machine. Everyone has felt the pause, the uncertainty, and the careful force required to continue. The train is still powerful, but not invincible. That makes it feel more real. Outside, the snow remains thick, but the wheels now speak again beneath you. Their rhythm returns not as background, but as reassurance. Each turn says the line is open for this mile, then this one, then this one. You lean back as the carriage sways, listening to iron recover its confidence. The storm has not ended. The night has not softened. Yet the train moves on, warm inside and cold outside, and carrying its passengers through delay into motion once more. You feel the blanket's rough weight, smell coal heat and wet wool, and watch frost tremble at the window. The snow presses close, but the rails continue under the dark, and the engine pulls you onward with stubborn, breathing patience. You settle into the peculiar wakefulness that belongs only to deep night travel. It is not full alertness, and it is not sleep. It is a soft middle country where thoughts loosen their collars and wander about without supervision. The train keeps moving, the lamps keep glowing, and your body keeps negotiating with the seat. which remains firm in its beliefs. The carriage has grown quieter, not silent, never silent, because a steam train would consider silence a personal insult, but the human sounds have thinned. The child sleeps with his mouth slightly open. The clerk has folded both arms across his portfolio. The salesman has tilted his hat over his eyes, perhaps to discourage commerce from finding him. Even the feathered woman has lowered her chin to her shawl. You try to sleep. This seems reasonable. The night is cold, the blanket is warm, the wheels provide a rhythm, and you have nowhere else to be until morning. Yet sleep does not obey simple railway logic. Your head leans one way, then your neck protests. You turn toward the window, then cold brushes your cheek. You lean inward. Then your shoulder meets the hard edge of the seat back. The carriage offers rest, not indulgence. You close your eyes anyway. Behind your eyelids, the motion continues. Darkness rocks gently, marked by the steady beat of wheels over rail joints. The sound becomes almost visual, a line of dots passing through your mind. Clack and hush, clack and hush. Then a deeper roll from the wheels under the next car. Then a faint metallic answer from somewhere ahead. The train is a long instrument, and tonight the storm plays accompaniment. Your breathing slows. For a few minutes, you drift near sleep. The blanket weighs across your knees. Your hands rest loosely together. The air smells smoky, warmer than tired. A dry taste of tea remains in your mouth. You hear the stove tick, then the distant whistle, then a murmur from a dreamer nearby. The sounds do not disturb you, they become stepping stones toward rest. Then your foot slips. It is a small thing, almost comic. One boot slides from the position you carefully arranged, and your knee jerks awake with unnecessary drama. Your eyes open, the reflected lamps shimmer in the frosted glass. Nobody has noticed your private catastrophe. This is a relief. Dignity survives, though barely. You shift again, searching for a better arrangement. You fold the blanket under one knee. You tuck your scarf more firmly behind your head. You angle your shoulders away from the draught near the window. This is the art of sleeping upright, a discipline older than railways and never truly perfected. People can build bridges, tunnels, boilers, and timetables, yet the human neck remains stubbornly unsolved. Sleeping cars offered better rest for those who could afford them, with berths that folded down or converted from daytime seats. Pullman-style cars became especially famous in the late 19th century for combining travel with relative comfort. Relative is important. The beds were narrow, the curtains thin, and the train still moved like a train. Luxury does not repeal physics. You imagine passengers lying in berths further along the train. Some may be tucked behind curtains, shoes placed below, watches under pillows, faces lit by dim lamps in the aisle. A porter may pass quietly between them, checking straps, steps, and bedding. Someone snores with impressive confidence. Someone else lies awake. Regretting coffee, wealth buys a mattress. It does not guarantee sleep. In your seat, you listen to the carriage dream. The old man near the aisle breathes with a faint whistle in his nose. The young woman in brown mutters a word that sounds like a name. The father wakes, checks his family, and closes his eyes again. The nun's beads shift softly, once against her sleeve. Outside, snow rubs along the carriage with a thin, persistent sound. Inside, sleep moves from person to person like slow fog. The lamps burn lower now, their flames turn down for the night. Their glow makes the ceiling seem farther away. Shadows have softened into wide patches, hiding stains, scuffs, and the practical wear of travel. The carriage looks gentler than it did under brighter light. Darkness is merciful that way. It edits what daylight insists on explaining. A curious railway superstition drifts through your mind. Some travellers believed it was unlucky to count the cars of a train at night, especially during foul weather. Others avoided speaking of accidents while underway, as if words might invite misfortune to sit beside them. Sensible people may smile at that, but not too loudly. At midnight in a snowstorm, even sensible people become respectful toward nonsense. The wheels strike a smoother stretch of track, and the rhythm lengthens. The change feels like a hand smoothing a blanket. You let your eyes close again. This time, you do not chase sleep directly. You let the sounds do their work. The engine's distant breath, the muted roll beneath the floor, the slight rattle of glass, the hush of bodies resting in shared warmth. Your thoughts drift to railway time, that invisible net holding the journey together, somewhere. Clerks have written schedules, dispatchers have sent orders, station masters have checked watches under lamps, crews have planned crossings, stops, and connections. All that structure surrounds this dark ride. Yet here in the carriage, time feels soft. Minutes stretch, fold, and vanish. Night travel makes clocks seem theoretical. Historians still argue about whether the railway made people feel more controlled by time or strangely freed from older distances. Timetables discipline daily life, but they also open new choices for work, visits, migration, and trade. You can feel both truths in your own tired body. The train follows a schedule, yet your mind floats loose. Somewhere between towns, neither here nor there, the train sways through another curve. Your shoulder meets the wall with a padded thump. You open your eyes halfway and stare at the frost. The patterns have changed, thickened by breath and cold. Some clear spaces have clouded. Some white branches have spread until they touch. The pane looks like a map of countries nobody has named. Perhaps that is best. Maps lead to arguments. A faint blue light appears outside for an instant, then disappears. It may have been moonlight through torn cloud, or snow reflecting the headlamp, or your tired eyes inventing drama. You do not investigate. At this hour, mysteries are allowed to remain employed. Not every pale shimmer requires a committee. You become aware of your hands again. One is tucked under the blanket, warm and heavy. The other rests near the window, cooler at the fingertips. You move it back and rub the fingers together. Skin catches slightly on dry winter cracks near the knuckles. The sensation is small and vivid, reminding you that you are a body trying to rest inside a machine crossing weather. A passenger somewhere coughs, then apologizes into the dark. Nobody answers, which is kind. The carriage accepts the cough and absorbs it. A few moments later, someone sighs in sleep with such deep satisfaction that the salesman stirs enviously beneath his hat. You understand him. A good sigh can feel like a luxury compartment. The porter appears briefly, a quiet silhouette moving down the aisle. He carries a small lamp shaded with his hand. The light slides over shoes, bags, blankets, and sleeping faces. He pauses near the stove, checks it, adjusts something with a soft metal touch, then moves on. His steps are balanced to the train's motion. He seems less to walk than to agree with the floor. Porters in sleeping and passenger cars often did heavy invisible labour. They handled bedding, luggage, shoes, messages, cleaning, and passenger requests at all hours. In some countries, especially the United States, black porters became central figures in railway travel, performing skilled service work under difficult social conditions. Their labour helped define comfort for others while demanding endurance from themselves. Warmth had human hands behind it. You watch the porter vanish through the dim end of the car. The door closes softly. A breath of colder air follows, then fades. The carriage resumes its half-sleep. You feel grateful in a vague though drowsy way. The kind of gratitude that appears when someone tends a stove you did not notice was cooling. Your eyes close again. This time, sleep comes closer. Images move behind your eyelids, not dreams exactly, but pieces of the journey rearranged. Lanterns in snow, a silver lozenge case, the red mouth of a firebox, frost-shaped like ferns, a child's mitten, a worker's shovel lifted under blowing white, The mind collects these small objects and turns them slowly, like beads on a string. The train begins climbing a gentle grade. You sense the engine working harder, though speed changes little. The rhythm gains weight. The floor vibrates more deeply. A muffled exhaust beat reaches back through the train, steady and forceful. You imagine the locomotive leaning into the hill, driving wheels gripping steel, steam pushing pistons with fierce invisible pressure. Even in your drowsiness, the labour is present. You do not open your eyes, for you saw. There's nothing to fix, nothing to decide. Then. The train climbs, the storm blows, the passengers sleep. Your task is wonderfully small. You need only breathe, keep warm, and let the night pass through you without resistance. A short dream takes you. For a moment, you are walking beside the train rather than sitting inside it. Snow reaches your knees, but you're not cold. The windows glow above you, each one holding a sleeping stranger. The engine breathes like a dragon that has learned manners. You raise a hand to touch the warm light, and the dream dissolves into the creak of your seat. You wake without alarm. The carriage is still there, patient and dim. Your neck aches slightly, but your mind feels softened by the brief absence. The blanket has slipped to one side. You pull it back slowly, enjoying its rough woolen drag over your lap. The air is warm enough now, though dry. Your lips part for a quiet breath, and you taste coal, tea, and sleep. Outside, the snow has become less furious. Or perhaps you're simply farther from caring. It still presses against the windows, still hides the land, still keeps its cold counsel beyond the glass. But inside, the night has deepened into a gentler spell. People are too tired for worry. Even the train seems to speak more softly, though it continues with the same iron purpose. You lean your head into the scarf and let the wheels count for you again. 1 mile, then another, 1 breath, then another. The carriage rocks, the lamps burn low, and the sleeping village around you rests in fragments. You're not fully asleep, not fully awake, and not troubled by either. The train carries your half-dreams through the snow, and the dark accepts them one by one. You wake to a different kind of motion, slower and more cautious, as if the train has entered a place that requires manners. The wheels still turn beneath you, but their rhythm shortens. The carriage gives a gentle tug, then eases forward. Somewhere ahead, the whistle sounds once, not the long cry of open country, but a measured note for a sleeping station. You open your eyes fully and listen. The passengers remain mostly quiet, though the slowing train pulls a few of them from sleep. The clerk lifts his head with the startled dignity of a man who has lost an argument with his own collar. The father near the family glances out, then checks the child. The feathered woman opens one eye, judges the hour, and closes it again. Some people can serve criticism beautifully. A faint glow appears beyond the frosted window. Not dawn, not yet. This light is smaller and nearer, yellowed by snow and lamp glass. The train creeps past a signal post, its shape blurred by ice. Then a platform edge comes into view, buried under white ridges. You see a lantern swinging in the hand of someone standing almost alone in the storm. A remote station takes form slowly. It is less a place than an arrangement of light. Wood, snow, and patience. A low depot building stands beside the track, its roof heavily loaded, its windows glowing with weary amber. Smoke rises from a chimney and flattens quickly in the wind. A signboard hangs under the eaves, the painted letters half hidden by clinging frost. You cannot read the name. Perhaps that makes it better. The train stops with a soft final jolt. Stillness returns, but this time it has company. Outside, boots crunch on packed snow. A station bell rings twice, thin and cold. A dog barks once from somewhere behind the depot, then seems to reconsider the whole profession. The carriage door opens, and winter enters carrying the smell of snow, coal smoke, cold wood, and lamp oil from the platform. A porter steps down with a lantern, and another man climbs aboard briefly. He wears a thick coat, a fur cap pulled low, and a scarf wrapped so tightly that only his eyes appear. He speaks with the conductor in low tones near the door. Their words do not carry clearly, but their posture tells a familiar story: weather, track, messages, timing, and the difficult behaviour of the universe. At small stations in the 1890s, the station agent often handled many duties at once. He might sell tickets, send telegraph messages, manage freight, supervise baggage, coordinate train orders, and keep the stove going in the waiting room. It was a role of paperwork, vigilance, and local knowledge. In a storm, that knowledge mattered. A station agent knew which drift formed first, which road vanished earliest, and whose wagon might still arrive despite common sense. You watch through the fogged glass as figures move on the platform. One man wheels a barrow loaded with sacks, though the snow catches at the wheel and makes every yard a negotiation. Another carries a mailbag over one shoulder, the leather dark with wet. The bag disappears into a doorway, then another appears in return. The postal service continues because apparently snow has not filed the correct objection forms. The mailbag fascinates you. And letters inside may have crossed rivers, cities, farms, and mountains. Some carry news of births, debts, illness, proposals, wages, or apologies delayed too long. Some may be ordinary bills, which feels less poetic but historically unavoidable. Railway mail service became an important part of fast communication in many countries, with mail sorted on moving trains along major routes. Even in a storm, messages kept travelling beside passengers and freight. The carriage feels restless without becoming lively. People stir because a stop promises change, not necessarily improvement, just change. A few passengers rise to stretch their legs, though the conductor warns them to remain near the car and mind the icy steps. Those words have a sobering effect. The idea of fresh air is charming until fresh air is actively trying to remove your toes. You decide to stand. Your legs complain immediately, which is fair. They have been folded into railway obedience for hours. You brace one hand on the seat back and rise carefully. The floor seems less steady now that the train is not moving, as if your body has become loyal to swaying and mistrustful of stillness. You roll your shoulders gently, warmth shifts under your coat. Blood returns to sleepy places with a prickling sensation. The aisle is narrow and dim, but few others stand too. The salesman stretches his back and makes a small noise that might be pain or negotiation. The clerk adjusts his collar and checks his portfolio, confirming that ambition has survived the night. The old man near the aisle asks the conductor how long the stop will last. The conductor says only a few minutes, perhaps more if orders require it. Perhaps more. That phrase has governed much of human history. You move nearer the doorway but do not step down. The open door frames the platform like a winter painting. Snow falls under the station lamps, slow and thick, turning the air into glittering dust. The boards are packed with footprints, some fresh, some nearly filled. A line of milk cans stands near the wall, their metal lids white with frost. Beside them sits a wooden crate covered by sacking. A station cat appears under the bench. It is plump, striped, and clearly employed in a supervisory capacity. It walks along the wall with its tail low, pauses near the milk cans, and looks at the train with deep professional skepticism. A porter clicks his tongue softly. The cat ignores him. Railway cats were not uncommon around stations, warehouses, and depots, where grain, parcels, and warm corners attracted mice and human gossip. This cat seems to manage both. A quirky tradition in some depots involved giving local animals informal names connected to railway work. Cats might be called Signal, Ticket, Switch, or Colonel. because people in cold places need entertainment. Dogs often learned train times and appeared for scraps with suspicious punctuality. Such stories rarely enter official records, but they cling to railway memory like snow on a platform roof. The cat vanishes beneath a baggage cart, leaving no explanation. A gust enters the doorway, and you feel it along your face and throat. It is clean, fierce, and edged with ice. It carries the smell of pine boards, coal smoke from the depot chimney, wet leather, and something faintly sweet from the waiting room. Perhaps coffee simmering on a stove. The cold shocks you awake more effectively than any alarm clock. You step back slightly, defeated with dignity. Inside the carriage, warmth surrounds you again, thick and smoky. The contrast is startling. Your cheeks tingle, your eyes water slightly. You understand why passengers crowd near doors at stops, seeking news and air, then retreat almost at once. Curiosity is brave, flesh is practical. The station agent climbs aboard with a folded paper protected under his coat. He hands it to the conductor, who reads it near the lamp. Train orders, perhaps, or a message about track conditions ahead. In the railway world, written orders could govern movements when schedules alone were not enough. Misunderstanding them could be dangerous, so procedures mattered. In sleepy language, this means paperwork kept large iron objects from meeting rudely. Historians still debate how much ordinary passengers understood the complex systems protecting their journeys. Signals, timetables, telegraph orders, dispatching practices, and crew rules formed a hidden architecture around travel. Some passengers noticed only delays and whistles. Others followed railway operations with keen interest. You can feel the hidden system tonight, present but mostly invisible, like the track beneath snow. A woman steps onto the platform from another car, wrapped in a cloak and carrying a small valise. Someone from the depot hurries toward her with an umbrella that performs badly in the wind. They speak close together, faces lit by lantern light. The woman nods, then follows him toward the building. Perhaps this is her stop. Perhaps she is changing trains. Perhaps she's about to spend several cold hours discovering that timetables are suggestions written with confidence. A trunk is unloaded from the baggage car. It thumps onto the barrow, heavy enough to make the porter bend his knees. Snow gathers instantly on its lid. The owner is not visible, which makes the trunk seem independent, a dark creature arriving in town with private plans. The barrow wheel squeaks as it turns toward the depot. The sound is high, thin, and oddly lonely. You listen to the station's little orchestra. The bell chain knocks against metal. The telegraph inside the office clicks faintly during a lull in the wind. Boots crunch. A horse stamps somewhere beyond the platform. Steam drifts low along the cars and wraps around the lamps. The snow softens every edge, so even work sounds dreamlike. The telegraph click draws your attention. Messages might be passing through this station while you stand wrapped in a blanket near the door. Dots and dashes leap across wires into the storm, carrying instructions, business, family news, and railway orders. The world outside looks buried and slow, yet information moves invisibly through it. There is something almost magical about that, sensible magic, with poles and batteries. The conductor folds the paper and slips it into his coat. He exchanges a nod with the station agent. The agent steps back onto the platform, boots sinking into packed snow. The porter calls quietly to those outside. A few passengers return from the platform with red cheeks and exaggerated calm. One man stamps snow from his boot so vigorously that the feathered woman opens both eyes. He stops at once. You return to your seat as the door closes. The warmth feels deeper after the brief cold, almost luxurious. Your blanket waits in a heap, and you draw it back over your knees. The seat, once too firm, now seems familiar. The window beside you is clouded by a new moisture from the opened door. You wipe a small oval with your sleeve and peer through. The station begins to slide backward as the train starts again. Slowly, The depot windows drift past, bright squares in the snow. For a moment, you glimpse the waiting room through one pane. A stove glows red. A bench holds two silent figures. A clock hangs above a ticket window. On the floor, near the stove, the striped cat sits upright like a magistrate. Then the depot slips away. The platform lamps recede into the storm. One by one, the signboard disappears. The milk cans vanish. The telegraph poles resume their march beside the track, their wires dark against the pale sky. The train gathers speed carefully, leaving behind the little island of light. You feel the wheels regain their pattern, and with it, the carriage returns to its travelling sleep. Remote stations have a way of making the world feel larger and smaller at once, larger, because you sense the miles of snow around each settlement, smaller, because one lamp, one stove, one agent, one cat, and one mailbag can hold an entire human outpost together. The train connects such places briefly, then releases them back into darkness. You lean back and let the image of the depot remain. Warm windows into snow, a chimney bending smoke into wind, a telegraph key clicking in a room where someone is awake for everyone else. The night outside remains vast, but it no longer feels empty. It is dotted with stations, homes, barns, switch houses, and people keeping fires alive. The carriage settles around you again. The clerk sleeps with his portfolio safe. The family's child breathes evenly under a blanket. The salesman's hat lowers over his eyes. The feathered woman, having survived the boot-stamping incident, returns to silence. You tuck your hands beneath the blanket and feel the last sting of platform cold leave your fingers. Outside, the train moves from lamplight into snowy darkness, carrying mail, passengers, luggage, and unspoken stories along the line. Inside, the stop becomes another quiet layer of the night. The wheels count onward. The stove warms the floor. The frost renews itself on the glass. Somewhere behind you, the station cat has resumed its duties, and the little depot glows on in the storm. You wake to a faint change in the colour of the window. The glass is still frosted, still clouded by breath and cold, yet the darkness beyond it has loosened. It is no longer black. It has softened into a deep blue grey, the kind of colour that arrives before sunrise and asks everyone to be quiet about it. The train continues through the snow, but the storm has lost some of its force. Flakes still fall, crossing the window in pale streams, yet they move with less anger now. The wind no longer scrapes so sharply at the seams. The carriage seems to feel it too. The walls creak more gently. The lamps burn low and tired, no longer fighting the night, but keeping it company. You sit up slowly. Your neck is stiff, your shoulders heavy, and your legs have learned several opinions about sitting. The blanket lies across your lap in uneven folds. Warm in the middle and cool near the edges, your scarf has slipped from its position and rests partly behind your shoulder. You touch it with one hand, feeling wool, dust, and the faint dampness of a long winter journey. Around you, the carriage begins to emerge from sleep, not all at once. People wake in layers, like a town under snow. The father near the family opens his eyes first and looks toward the child. The child still sleeps, cheek pressed into a bundle of cloth, one mitten tucked near his chest. The clerk wakes with a sudden blink, then immediately checks his portfolio. Ambition rises early, apparently. The salesman lifts his hat and peers beneath the brim. His moustache has lost some confidence during the night. He rubs his face, looks toward the window, and gives a small nod, as though Dawn is a client whose arrival he expected. The feathered woman opens her eyes and sits upright with impressive speed. Her hat feathers, however, require more time to restore civilization. The stove has settled into a dull warmth. Its heat remains, but it no longer fills the carriage with the same force. Morning cold begins finding the seams again. You pull the blanket closer while the porter tends the fire. opening the stove door with a careful hand. Red light spills briefly across the floorboards. Coal shifts inside and the smell deepens. Smoky and mineral. A fresh shovelful lands with a soft clatter. The stove answers with a small rise of heat. You feel it reach your ankles first, then your hands. It is a modest blessing, but a real one. Outside the window, pale snowfields appear through thinning frost, flat and endless beneath the dim sky. Fence posts stand half buried. A line of trees lifts black branches from the white earth. The world has not vanished after all. It has merely been wrapped. The train crosses open country at a careful pace. Snow clings to embankments and gathers in hollows along the track. The telegraph poles continue beside the line, each one passing with quiet regularity. Their wires sag under frost, yet they hold in the growing light. They look less magical and more practical, which is its own kind of wonder. Messages, like trains, prefer a path. A long whistle sounds ahead, softened by distance and snow. It no longer feels lonely. In the blue morning, it sounds almost domestic, like a kettle announcing that the household has survived another night. The note fades across fields where barns, hedges, and frozen streams slowly reveal themselves. You glimpse a farmhouse roof under a thick white cap. Smoke rises from its chimney, straight at first, then drifting sideways. Someone there is awake, feeding a stove, perhaps listening to the passing train. By the 1890s, railways had changed how winter mornings began for many communities. Newspapers, mail, goods, passengers, and market information could arrive faster than older road travel allowed. Even when weather interfered, a train passing at dawn was not only a spectacle, it was connection made visible, with smoke, steel, and a timetable that everyone hoped would behave. Inside the carriage, small morning rituals begin. The clerk smooths his hair with damp fingers and immediately makes it worse. The salesman checks his sample case, then his cuffs, then the window reflection, which offers limited mercy. The mother opens the tin pail again, searching for something suitable for breakfast. The child wakes and asks whether it is still snowing. She says yes, but more kindly now. The old man near the aisle stretches one leg, then the other. With the caution of someone negotiating with history, his joints crack softly. He sighs in satisfaction, or surrender. The nun folds her hands over her parcel and looks toward the pale window. The young woman beside her adjusts her coat and whispers thanks for something small. Perhaps bread, perhaps company, perhaps simply the warmth of another human being nearby. You breathe in the morning air of the carriage. It smells different from night, still smoky, still woolen, still enclosed, but now mixed with awakening. There is the sharper scent of cold from opened cracks, the dry smell of paper being folded, the faint sweetness of stale fruit, and the warm bitterness of fresh coffee beginning somewhere nearby. Morning does not erase the night, it rearranges it. The porter brings hot water and coffee through the aisle. His movements are slower now, but steady. His face shows fatigue around the eyes, though his voice remains polite. He has spent the night serving sleep that was not his own. That quiet labour hangs in the carriage more strongly than any ornament. Comfort often arrives wearing plain shoes and carrying a pot. You accept hot water this time, cupping it between both hands. Steam rises and fogs your face. The heat feels clean, almost tender. After hours of habuki air, you do not need much, just the warmth of the cup, the damp breath against your lips, and the knowledge that the worst dark has passed. Outside, the sky grows paler by slow degrees. Historians still argue whether 19th century railway travel made people feel closer to nature or more separated from it. Some travellers wrote of seeing landscapes unfold with thrilling speed. Others felt insulated behind glass, smoke, schedules, and machinery. This morning, both feelings seem true. You are sheltered from the snow, yet the snow has shaped every sound, delay, breath, and thought of the journey. The train runs beside a frozen stream. You see it through a clear place in the glass, a dark ribbon partly covered by snow. Thin ice catches the dawn light with a dull silver gleam. Willow branches lean over the bank, each twig carrying a white line. The scene lasts only moments, then slips behind the carriage. It leaves a stillness in your mind. A deer appears near the edge of the trees. It stands motionless, head raised towards the train for one breath. Animal and machine regard each other across the snow. Then the deer turns and bounds away. Light against the white field, several passengers notice. Nobody speaks for a few seconds. Even the salesman remains silent, perhaps because he has no sample for deer. A small belief from rural railway lore says that seeing a wild animal at dawn from a train brings good luck for the day's arrival. There is no evidence for this, naturally, but evidence is not invited to every breakfast. You allow the idea to sit beside you. After a night of cold glass, coal smoke, delays, and half sleep, a deer in snow feels lucky enough. The carriage passes a row of workers' cottages near the line. Their windows glow faintly. Laundry lines hang stiff under snow. A woman in a dark shawl stands near a gate, watching the train pass with one hand raised against the weather. Perhaps she waves, perhaps she only shields her eyes. You lift your finger slightly anyway, though she cannot see you clearly. It feels polite to answer morning. The rails curve gently, and sunlight begins to find the clouds. Not full sun, not bright gold yet, but a pale spreading light that gathers along the horizon. The snowfields answer with soft blue shadows. The carriage lamps seem suddenly old and unnecessary. One by one, they are turned lower, then left to fade in the strengthening day. You notice how tired everyone looks, and how peaceful. Night travellers rubbed away some of the polish. Hair is flattened, collars are bent, shawls have slipped, gloves are missing and found again. The feathered woman finally removes a small mirror, studies herself, and appears to reach a private treaty with reality. This may be the morning's greatest diplomatic achievement. The train approaches a larger settlement. You sense it before you see much. More telegraph wires, more sidings, a cluster of dark freight cars under snow. A water tower rises beside the track, its wooden legs frosted white. Smoke hangs above low roofs. The engine slows, sending a gentle pressure through the train as the cars draw together. People begin preparing to arrive, even those not yet leaving. Luggage comes down from racks with thumps and muttered apologies. The mysterious package, now thoroughly understood as harmless, is retrieved with care. The father ties the blue cloth bundle. The mother buttons the child's coat. The clerk slides papers into his portfolio and closes the clasp. The salesman brushes his moustache with his thumb, because commerce must meet the morning respectably. You gather your own things slowly. The blanket is folded and left ready for collection. Your gloves feel cool and stiff when you pull them on. Your case emerges from beneath the seat with a scrape against the floor. Its brass corners are dull in the morning light. You touch the handle and feel the reality of arrival approaching, not hurried, but certain. The train glides past a signal cabin, where a figure stands in the window beside a stove. A red and white signal arm shows against the snow. Points and sidings spread ahead like dark lines drawn through the white yard. Switchmen move carefully between them, bundled and alert. The railway is waking, though perhaps it never truly slept. It has simply changed crews, changed lamps, changed kinds of watchfulness. The engine gives a final low whistle as the station appears. Roofers, platforms, lamps, and waiting figures come into view through steam. Snow has softened every edge, but human order is there beneath it. Barrows wait. Porters stand ready. A horse team stamps near the road. Breath rising in cloudy bursts. Somewhere inside the station, A stove is burning and a clock is insisting on its opinion. The train slows to a walking pace. You feel the last turn of the wheels beneath you, each rotation gentler than the last. The carriage creaks, then settles. Outside, platform boards slide into place beside the window. Faces appear through steam and snow. The brakes sigh, the couplings relax, and the long iron body becomes still. For a moment, no leaves. Then morning enters fully. Doors open, cold air rushes through the car, bright and clean. Voices rise on the platform, luggage is lifted, tickets checked, names called, greetings exchanged. You stand with your case in hand, feeling the stiffness in your legs and the warmth still stored under your coat. The night ride has passed into memory, but the rhythm remains inside you, gentle and persistent. You step toward the door and look once more at the carriage. The worn plush seats, the brass lamps, the frosted windows, the stove, the racks, the small marks of strangers passing. It has held you through snow, darkness, hunger, delay, and broken sleep. Not perfectly. Perfect comfort is rarely interesting, but it has held you well enough. You descend carefully onto the snowy platform. The boards are cold beneath your boots. Steam drifts around your knees, smelling of iron, coal, and morning. The air touches your face with sharp fingers, but you no longer feel unprepared for it. Behind you, the carriage windows glow softly with leftover warmth. Ahead, the station waits under snow, and the thesis of the day opens pale and quiet. The world has changed only a little, yet it feels newly washed. Snow lies over roofs and rails, over crates and benches, over the shoulders of waiting men. The storm has left its signature everywhere. You stand between warmth and cold, between night and morning, between the moving train and the still platform. For a few breaths, you simply listen as the engine exhales beside you. Now let the station fade a little. Let the voices become softer, and let the cold lose its edge. You no longer need to follow every sound. The wheels have done their counting. The lamps have done their glowing. The snow has done its quiet work upon the world. You can release the ticket, the timetable, the careful grip on your bag, and the small watchfulness that carried you through the night. Picture the train resting under pale morning light, its roof white with snow, and its windows warm with memory. Steam rises slowly, then thins into the sky. The platform grows calmer as footsteps drift away. Somewhere, a door closes gently. Somewhere, a stove settles into its coals. The air smells of winter, smoke, and the promise of bread from a distant kitchen. You are safe in the hush after travel. Your shoulders soften. Your hands grow still. Every mile has become a quiet thread, folded into the blanket of the morning. The cold remains outside, but it no longer presses hard. It simply lies over the fields, peaceful and wide. The warmth remains inside you, held like a small lamp behind the ribs. Let the snow fall without needing to be watched. Let the engine breathe without needing to be understood. Let the day wait at a distance. Gentle and patient, you have crossed the dark in a room of wood, brass, coal heat, and human sleep. Now there is only softness, only pale light, only the slow fading rhythm of iron wheels in memory.